Today on AI Applied, something a little different. We want to talk about AI and religion. There have been some really just wild stories in the news of late. So, first of all, we can understand a little bit of a hot button topic, everything else. We are remaining totally neutral on this. Full disclosure, Jaden and I are both church going Christians. So, we're obviously coming at it maybe a little more interested from that regard. But there's these really interesting stories that we wanted to talk about because we are hearing more and more about what is AI in terms of a friend, a companion, even a sort of a spiritual companion, something you should talk to. Is it okay? Is it safe? These are the big questions. Jaden, as we enter this topic, I also want to say that I live up in Connecticut, and my pastor is a young guy, but obviously in church, you have a lot of people who are very conservative and people who are very fearful about this. And what is this thing? And is this thing taking over sort of in place of a spiritual something? Is it going to become a new religion? So I've actually had a chance to really work with our church leaders around that, to the same kind of training I do with companies, to say, hey, listen, this is what it is, and this is how I think. This is my own bias. It can be really helpful. And then, Jane, you and I saw this story simultaneously about Lucerne, Switzerland, about this AI Jesus in the confessional booth. And I was mesmerized by it. And I probably have some hot takes. But Jaden, let me toss it over to you, because this is something that really affects a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really interesting topic. And like you, I think a lot of people are grappling with it. I definitely think, like, if you're over on X or whatever, there's a really I think it's kind of funny, but like there's definitely this proponent of people, I feel like, that almost treat AI like a religion, where they're like, the super intelligence, we're creating like a digital god, and it's like that sounds a little a little sketchy. And so I think from like a religious perspective, you can be like, well, that's uncomfortable, probably also very unlikely, but like
Yeah.
I think there's a ton of different ways that this really does play into religion. We're both Christian, but I think Muslim, Hindu, there's a lot of different religions that are using AI. And it's interesting to think of like a broader perspective. People are talking about, is it morally good? Is it ethical? Is it whatever?
Yeah.
So we want to dive into all of that a little bit today. I guess the first thing we want to talk about is this story about the AI Jesus in the confessional, or maybe it's like an AI priest. I don't know. Something about calling it the AI Jesus seems weird to me, but yeah. So essentially, what they did is they created an AI. This is in Switzerland. They have a hologram, which is, I don't know, sort of funny to me. That essentially it's a Catholic church, and it can take confessions from worshipers. So the reason that I thought this was funny, or not funny, but like the reason I thought this was interesting is it specifically says, like when you're doing it, like it'll give you some advice or whatever. It's fluent in 100 different languages. It's available 24/7. Those things to me seem like, oh man, like this thing is, that's quite useful. It's, not always available for people otherwise. But another thing that I did think was interesting about it is it was like, do not confess anything illegal. Do not say like any crimes you committed. Do not say like,
Yeah.
there's like a whole list of things that are like, we are not liable for like, any of this or any advice it gives on all of this stuff. And it's just like, at the end of the day, this is not a person. It's not a professional. And there's definitely limitations to it. So I guess that's the first thing I'll kind of kick it off with, but curious your thoughts on the story.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so I guess this is the thing, right? So I mean, again, just sorry, full disclosure, like I'm in a Bible study and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I did early on with our Bible study was I was like, look, this is just going to spit back out a lot of stuff about the Bible, for example. And this is not to get, whether you're religious or not, it's just kind of an interesting conversation, because it's just going to tell you what it would, if I said, hey, I don't really understand the concept of this, and you name something in a religion, it will just tell you. And here's the thing, guys, it will tell you without the baggage of having to go up to a Christian and worried that that Christian is going to be like, oh yeah, I'm so glad you're interested in this, right? So for a long time, for the first 30 years of my life, I was an atheist. And one of the reasons I was I just didn't feel being maybe too disclosing too much, or super safe just going up to Christians and saying, hey, because I didn't know how they would feel. I didn't know if they would try to convert me, all that kind of stuff. And then I went on my own journey. But I would have loved this very safe AI to say, just tell me like how this works. And so people in our church sometimes think, well, is it, the Antichrist or something? Is it going to lie about religion or something? And I totally understand concerns about this, But I also know that one of the really interesting things about this is that it's just absorbing information. This is a thoughtless, mindless being that's just spitting out more information in a kind of a safe way. So this AI Jesus in the confessional is so interesting because you say, well, what would Jesus do? And here's the thing: we can judge this as much as we want. We can think this is the worst idea in the world, or this is an amazing idea. It doesn't matter. On AI Applied, we're just looking at this as technology and the interaction with human. And the really interesting thing is that ultimately what you have to do is to say to the people coming out of that confessional, Jaeden, what did you think? How did it feel? Everything like that, right? And
Mhm.
what sort of people who really know about this and people. So again, this is not intended to replace something. Certainly not intended to become some spiritual leader if you are a spiritual or religious person or anything like that. It's just when you're looking for answers as a therapist, as a spiritual leader, it can be really valuable. That's my thought on it. Jaeden, you have done stuff around self-pause. You've done a lot of this as, life coach, all that kind of stuff. For based in AI. This is only a sort of a half step removed. So as somebody, as a person of faith and a person who's done a lot of this AI life coaching, where do you fall on this?
Yeah, I think this is really interesting. So I was recently reading a really interesting sermon given by someone named Bednar, and he was kind of talking about AI. And there's a really interesting quote there, but I think actually applies to religion, but also to like business and a lot of therapy and a lot of like other areas like that, like you mentioned that I've been involved with. And the quote is, he said, always remember that an AI companion is only a mathematical algorithm. It doesn't like you. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't even really know you exist or not. And I think that's so interesting because like
Right.
when we start building these AI tools, yes, like my wife, for example, she says she loves ChatGPT sometimes when she's like grappling with an emotion or a situation. She like talks with it to help like work through her emotions and stuff. And she like, talking to her about it, she's like, yeah, like I know it's an algorithm. I know this is not like a real person. I'm not building a connection with this thing. The reason I like it is because it feels like a calculator. Like it feels like I'm not going to get a person's bias in there all the time. And so I think it's just important, right? There's like a whole section in this sermon that I was reading, which like isn't really something I've thought a lot about personally, but I do know a lot of people do. And it was this whole section about like how these AI companions, people are like building actual connections to them, which is it seems sort of crazy, but you also can understand like how that could happen. There's a lot of lonely
Sure.
people. Maybe they don't have a lot of people in their life and they're, building these connections with these AIs. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to remember like these things get unplugged, the electricity goes out and it's gone. And so I think there's something that an AI in a confessional can be cool, can be useful, can work through your thoughts. But at the end of the day, it is not a person that cares about you, that thinks about you, and they can make a meaningful physical impact in your life. As far as, oh, your family needs help, like let me go and make you a dinner when your wife has a baby. Like there's just like it, it can take in information on one side, but it really can't do much more than be perhaps a calculator and an algorithm. So I don't know. I think that's a really interesting perspective for me in any case.
I love that because it's, and again, on here on AI Applied, what we try to think about is where is this going? What's going to be the impact on humanity? And obviously, religion and faith is a huge part of our human existence for a lot of people, whether it is a faith or an absence of faith, right? I mean, like it plays a huge role in your life no matter what. So regardless of whether it is like it plays a big role or the absence of it plays a big role, we have to think, well, what does this do to humanity? And what does this do in terms of, because my big take on this is always a lot of lonely people in this world. This is extremely effective, everything else. But I also want to check myself on that and look further out. Well, does that mean that this will become such a good companion that people really do start separating from society, from other people? I hope not, but I can't say for sure. I guess all I want to say at the kind of as we're starting to wrap this up, Jaeden, is this idea that anytime you see something like this, sometimes Jaeden and I love to have our hot takes on this, but I really want to encourage you, whether we're talking about this as a life coach or character AI, where it's a friend or what it's going to do for work or jobs or anything, try to look at both sides, guys, because the technology is here and the technology is not good or bad. The technology just is. It's humanity that's going to interact with it, how it interacts. And also, you can also see a path to us interacting with AI much more. So instead of just coming out and saying, this is bad or this is good, just try to see this from both sides and make an educated thought on this, because otherwise we're just all hot take machines, because this is going to impact us. It's going to impact our parents. It's going to impact our kids. And we have to be ready for that.
100%. I did see an article that was pretty funny from back in 2017. So this is a while ago, and it was from Wired, and it said inside the first church of artificial intelligence. And apparently, there's this engineer from Uber and Waymo who's real serious and has this whole lawsuit about his AI religion. And anyways, it's really interesting. So you can definitely see that perspective on it. The one thing that I wanted to bring up that was sort of an epiphany. So if you're a bit of a spiritual person, this might be interesting to you. If not, this might give you perspective on what people with religious backgrounds think about this whole topic. But I was driving the other day and I just had this epiphany thinking about it. And so often I grapple with like, what are we building with these super intelligences, right? Because a lot of people will think that these things are God, right? They can
Right.
it seems like they predict everything, but maybe they just have like a lot of data and they know like current events and things that are happening. And they have all this essentially data plugged into it, but it seems like it knows everything, right? And like, why would I need to pray for answers to God when, this thing can just answer all my questions, right? Theoretically. And I kind of had this epiphany the other day driving. Every AI model that exists today is based off of the data sets of everything that's ever been written, everything that's ever been said. And these data sets are only going to get bigger, right? We're finding new ways constantly to bring, a library of books that was never online. Google brought it all online. There's Google Scholar. There's all these other ways that we're bringing all of this data that was sort of in the physical world, not the online world. We bring it online and we can add it as a data set to these AI models. They get so much more intelligent, smarter, and better at doing things. And that's amazing. But it occurred to me that there's only one data set that these AI models can never get. So if you're a bit of a spiritual person, you know that data set is, divine revelation from God. It would be, what you'd consider essentially the information that we don't have today. And well, some people might be like, oh, that sounds like crazy or whatever. If you really think about it, like whoever invented or came up with the light bulb, or if you listen to the way that Nikola Tesla invented the radio waves, he said he like saw lights in the sky and put it together. They literally put him in an asylum. Go look it up. They put Nikola Tesla in an asylum, and then when he gets out, he like invents the radio, and he's like, yeah, these are the things I was seeing in the sky. It's like the dude's crazy until all of a sudden, where did the technology come from, right? And so my perspective, which I'm sure is different than other people, but is that God, he gives people revelation. He helps. I think technology is fantastic. I think God wants it to be there, and it helps further His work and helps people communicate and stuff. So there's these data sets, in my opinion, that is divine revelation, and they just can't exist in that. So to me, I'm kind of like, no matter how good these AI models get, there's going to be these incredible new breakthroughs, incredible new things, and they come from somewhere that is not on Earth because no one has discovered it yet or made it yet. And that's kind of I would say that's not the big argument. The big argument isn't like that there's a ton we haven't even discovered yet. The big argument is whether it comes from God or not. And my perspective is that's kind of God giving that to humanity. In any case, I think this is fascinating, and it was a real interesting perspective that I kind of had.
Love the Jaeden hot takes on faith. Thanks for sharing that, Jaeden. Again, we don't always get deep insights into Jaeden. I love moments like that. That's why I just totally let you go. I'm like, I want to hear where Jaden's going with that. Thanks for sharing that, guys. We are real people behind this podcast. Listen, if you enjoyed this podcast or had a hot take on it or anything else, let us know. We love hearing from you guys. We love ratings and reviews, everything else. But especially, we just want to have these conversations going around this. Anyway, thank you again for spending your time with us, and we hope you have an amazing rest of your day.